Welcome to J-Mart's State of Health podcast. I'm your host, J-Mart, and on this podcast, I want to share my experiences as a personal trainer and health coach, as well as my personal stories from self-experimentation about the various aspects of health, ranging from physical training and nutrition to other lifestyle choices. In this episode, I will be discussing the three most important points when it comes to building muscle mass with my friend and client Alex. Alex is a Pilates instructor as well as a mother of a 15-month-old boy. She came to me for help with reaching her new goal of building muscle mass after successfully losing all the weight gained from pregnancy by herself. We talked about the three pillars of muscle building, also known as muscle hypertrophy, in depth. They are number one, adequate stimulus through physical training. We specifically talked about the strategy of alternating training blocks between high volume with low to moderate loads and low volume with heavy loads. The second pillar is support for muscle hypertrophy with nutrition. We discussed the need to be in a caloric surplus and macronutrient and micronutrient requirements to gain muscle mass. And the third and last pillar is optimizing recovery to promote growth and repair. We talked about getting adequate amounts of sleep and optimizing the circadian rhythm for recovery. If you've ever wondered, what do I need to do or change in order to build muscle mass as efficiently as I can? Then this episode is for you. If you've never thought about gaining more muscle mass, then perhaps I can sow the seed of you becoming curious about it by quickly mentioning the downsides of low muscle mass. So low muscle mass is associated with increased risk of falls, osteoporosis, hospital readmission, and difficulties in activities of daily living. At the same time, it leads to fat mass increases late in life, which increases the risk of developing sarcopenic obesity. Of course, association does not mean causation, but I think many of you will be able to see that lack of physical training is what connects low muscle mass to associate with all these negative health outcomes. If you want to be in a positive, thriving state of health, then think about what you need to do to gain more muscle mass. Before we start the episode, I want to do a quick shameless plug of my free bodyweight training program called Body Basics, which requires absolutely no equipment to get started. Body Basics is a summary of the most important movement lessons I've learned in the past 4 years as a personal trainer, combined into an accessible training program for beginner and intermediate trainees. If that sounds like you, then get started with the program at subscribepage.com/bodybasics. That's subscribepage, SUBSCRIBEPAGE, subscribepage.com/bodybasics, BODYBASICS, Body Basics, no space. All right, let's listen to the first episode of J-Mart's State of Health podcast. It's my conversation with my friend and client Alex, where we discuss the three pillars of muscle hypertrophy. Hey, Alex.
Hi, John.
Thanks for joining me on Zoom.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. So you came to me with a question, and it was about a specific goal that you have that you need my help in kind of putting the roadmap out for you in terms of how to get there. So why don't we start with that? What is your goal?
Right. So I'm now 15 months postpartum. I finally lost all of that postpartum weight. And now my next goal is to gain muscle. And so as a Pilates instructor, I know a lot about movement and stuff like that, but I don't know how to strictly exercise for gains.
Mm-hmm.
And diet. So I don't know how to alter my diet in order to get the best results possible, because I really only want to try this for about 12 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's kind of part of your question was, how long do you think would be a good amount of time to put a serious effort towards this?
Yeah.
To see some sort of significant change? Yeah. And my suggestion was that 12 weeks would be a good amount to start with, or at least to put your effort towards, not to start with, because it's not like this is, you're going at a high intensity for this amount of time, and then you would like to kind of take a step back and reassess and kind of go back to your normal life maybe.
Yeah, well, like a normal life, and keep exercise involved in it always, but maybe not as intense. And I think it works out really well, the 12 weeks, because it'll take me right to the end of 2020. So nice way to end off a great year.
Sure. You can celebrate at
Exactly.
Christmas with a big turkey. Cool. All right. So I guess just to let everyone in on this conversation a little bit deeper, we actually have already had this kind of talk before, and I already kind of went over what my initial thoughts were regarding like building muscle. And if you remember, I mentioned three key things that we need when we're talking about muscle building.
Yeah.
So let's go over all three of them. So the first one, I'll give you the first one, and I'll quiz you on the second and third one.
Oh, no, there was a quiz.
or do you want to do the first? Do you want to start with one because you'll probably get one? And then
There was the most important one that I was very excited about was rest.
rest. So yes. So adequate sleep, right? That's actually if we're going by order, I would say. Well, no, I'm not going to give like a ranking or a hierarchy, but in terms of like a timeline, I would say then it's like the last thing that happens, because you need that recovery. Because when you're training, right, you're actually damaging tissue, and then there's the growth and repair period, and that happens during sleep. Exactly. So we need adequate amounts of sleep, or else the work you're doing is kind of going to waste. Anything else you remember?
The work part.
The work part, right? Adequate stimulus. We need adequate stimulus, and this is why you're coming to me. And then the last one.
Food, protein.
Exactly. So you got it. You got all three. So we need adequate if we're going kind of like the timeline, we need adequate stimulus. We need to work hard and the right amount to give the signal to our body that we want to build muscle. Then we need the building blocks for that muscle building to happen. And that's where nutrition, diet comes in. Protein, you mentioned, absolutely. And lastly, we have the building blocks, we have the signal. Okay, let's do it. Let's rebuild. It's not going to happen daytime. It's going to happen when we're sleeping, when we're recovering. Okay, all that's clear so far, right?
Clear.
Okay, so clear as mud. So let's move on to each one individually. So let's start with adequate stimulus. So that's kind of like, I guess, one of the main reasons why you're asking me for help. Maybe just like, what do you know? And then maybe there's like certain myths that we can bust or something. Because I do like, maybe one thing I'll touch on quickly is when you first came to me, you said you wanted to tone a lot, and I kind of gave you what my thoughts were on that.
I didn't like that. That was incorrect verbiage.
Well, okay, so why do you think I think that?
Right, because toning is not really a state of anything, right?
Sure.
What I meant by toning was that, like, if I held my arm up, you would see that I have muscles. That's what I meant by tone. But I'm also aware that tone is like an actual something to do with your muscles, and
yeah, absolutely.
it actually like has a tone, which is a different thing. So
yeah, exactly. So the tone of the muscle is what's keeping you upright when you're standing, as opposed to just falling over like a jello, like
I already have tone.
inflating a balloon man. Except he's actually staying up, but you would be falling if you didn't have tone in your muscles.
Right.
So what you're saying is you want to be able to see muscle.
Yeah.
And you want it not to be covered by fat. So you want to build muscle and lose body fat.
That's correct. Yeah.
Which means you want to have a better body composition.
Correct.
Okay. That's kind of, it's a common thing that I think just marketers in the fitness industry have gone after. And I mean, I don't have a problem with them doing that, but I also because it's everyone can market anything they want to in any way. I'm not going to stop anyone, but I'm also going to try to push back and offer a rebuttal by saying that it's not a real thing, and that if you want what you're describing, which many women want, sorry, I didn't mean to say girls, I meant women, then you want to achieve a better body composition through losing body fat and increasing muscle mass. And that just puts everybody on the same page, and then we can like have a deeper conversation moving from that.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. So one, quick advice that I'll give on training is when it comes to building muscle, and this is it doesn't take a genius to figure this out, but the best way to stimulate muscle growth is to alternate between high volume and high intensity.
Okay.
Right. So when it comes to muscle building, as long as you use a weight that's between 40 to 85%, I believe that's the range that most studies quote, and you work that weight close to your failure point.
Can I ask a question? 40 to 80% of what?
Your 1 rep max.
Of my 1 rep max. Okay.
Yeah, for that same exercise. Yeah, sorry, I wasn't very clear on that. Thank you. Yeah, so 40 to 85% of your 1 rep max for that exercise. If you use that amount of weight and you work that weight to close to failure, then you've done adequate stimulus to, signal muscle hypertrophy, to build muscle.
Okay.
So that's a huge range, right?
Yeah, that's a big range. And then, how do I know exactly what my 1 rep max is? Because, like, for anybody watching this is also happening during like COVID-19 quarantines, and gyms are not really an option, so I have to use like what is in my home.
Right, and so that'll have to come from different variations of body weight exercises.
Okay.
And kind of figuring out what is the variation that feels the highest intensity that you can maybe do at most 2 to 3 reps of.
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
And then you'd have to scale that. And then, and one easy way to do that, I guess, is to think about reps in reserve. This is good. I like that question. So, because now we're going off on an important tangent that I'd like to talk about is this idea of reps in reserve. Okay, so you can do an exercise and be able to do, 10 reps, and after that, you can't do any more. That's your failure point. And what you can do is assign that a rate of perceived exertion of 10, right? So you reach failure, so that's 10. And then what you can do then is say, okay, I'm going to go to 80 or 90% of that. So I'm going to have 1 or 2 reps in reserve. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's now going to be kind of like your, close estimation when it comes to, using body weight as opposed to the weights that you're doing.
Got it. So in layman's terms, like, I could be able to do 2 more, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then, so then if you have 2 reps in reserve, then your kind of rate of perceived exertion is an 8 out of 10. So you can assign that to be 80%. So now you're in that 40 to 80% range.
Got it.
Okay. And so going back to that large range from 40 to 85%, you can kind of think about it very intuitively. With a lower weight that's closer to 40% of your 1 rep max, you're going to be able to do a high volume. You're going to do a lot of reps. And then when you get to the 85% range of your 1 rep max, you're only going to be able to do a few reps. So it naturally makes sense. You're going to do waves of kind of training where you're going to do high reps, keep the weights low. And then tire yourself out that way, and then switch to the high weights and, amp up the intensity, make each rep count, but it's only maybe 3 to 5 reps, and then keep switching back and forth. So I think for the 12-week program that we're thinking about for designing for you, we'll basically start with so I would say we'll just separate it into 3-4 week chunks. The first 4 weeks is going to be more of an introductory, kind of get you back into things. And then the last 8 weeks, every 2 weeks, I think we'll just alternate between high volume, high intensity, high volume, high intensity.
Okay, so it'll be like a week kind of thing. Like, this is a volume week, this is an intensity week.
Yeah, it'll be every 2 week blocks basically for volume and to intensity. I think that's a good amount of time to do like one or the other.
Right.
And then be able to switch back enough times during that 8 weeks to really to really, have a big effect? Because you said you want to really go for this as much as you can for these 12 weeks. So
I am saying that now, John. I am, and I feel like I've dug myself a little bit of a hole. I'm thought, which is good. I mean, that's kind of what I wanted is to keep myself,
accountable.
Yes, that's the word.
That's the word. Accountability.
Accountability. Otherwise, I don't know. Like, I don't think my 15-month-old will keep me accountable. I don't think.
Well, in all fairness to you, you kept yourself very accountable in order to, get to where you are at this point. I know you maybe had some struggles in the beginning, but you overcame that, and you're kind of at your weight prior to getting pregnant. So amazing, good for you. And I think that's great.
Now the journey moves on.
So, all right, so let's move on to the second bullet point for what we need for muscle hypertrophy, which was, so diet and nutrition. So we have movement and exercise, we have diet and nutrition. We need the two in harmony. They can't be clashing, or else.
Yeah, this is the one that I'm scared of, because the exercise you can add in. I can get that in. It's the diet that I'm like nervous long term.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the first week, sure. Second week, sure. But I think it's going to be like week 6, 7, 8. That is going to be tough.
Right. Well, I think, there is you're right. The progression is basically, you kind of get into it and you're excited in the beginning. So you're pretty good, and you even kind of get the hang of it, and you start getting used to it. But then kind of in the middle there, you get into a rut, and you have to, you look for supports around you. And, I definitely can be that. People around you, your family you can talk to them about it. So what do you think? So we already have talked about this. We'll definitely cover all the points briefly again, but what do you think is going to be the biggest challenge for you in terms of diet? What's going to be the hardest thing, the biggest obstacle?
Well, so I don't live alone. I live with, my husband and my parents and one of my sisters. So I feel like it'll be a little bit of a challenge for me there's a lot of people eating things that I'm not going to be able to eat, or vice versa, or I'm making dinner for everybody else. So I think it's just going to be that separation between their mine, and maybe hopefully we can try to find a little bit of an overlap. So like I don't have to make myself my own dinners every single time, and that I can kind of eat what they're eating too and not feel like completely isolated. Like I'm only eating chicken every single night and they're eating pasta. You know what I mean? I think that's going to
be right. So you definitely. Sorry, what was that last thing?
Temptations. That's the word I was looking for.
Right. Temptation's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when we did talk about this last time, I did kind of go over how you don't have to be completely restrictive in terms of what you're eating.
Yeah.
Ultimately, for muscle hypertrophy, you do need to be in a calorie surplus. So.
Calorie surplus, everybody's favorite.
I mean, I think it's possible. I also think it's possible to be, at a slight deficit, or, not overly exceeding your, basal metabolic rate in terms of how much calories you consume. But it's definitely easier if you're in excess.
Right.
At least that's my, experience with it. So, you don't have to feel like you have to cut down on the total amount of food you're eating. It's just, so you're talking about the temptations of like some of the foods that, well, what do you think you can't eat? You can't. Pasta. Well, so do you want, I think from what my original suggestion is you can eat it, just depends on how much.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of like what you made me feel a little bit more at ease when we talked the last time, because you made it seem like it isn't like crazy changes. And obviously like I'll stay away from anything like processed or like excess, like just refined sugars, etc.
Sure. Yeah, having a focus on a whole foods kind of approach to, making your meals, absolutely. That's going to be just generally good health advice. I think it'll help with the, muscle hypertrophy as well. And then the other kind of main points, I guess, that we discussed regarding food was that obviously, you have to have more of a protein centric view at what you're consuming. I guess we're trying to see the food as more of a fuel, right? Rather than like this social kind of instrument that, we use to, entertain ourselves.
Right. So the last time we talked, you talked about like certain percentages and like, so how many grams of protein that I would need per day based on my current body weight and like the percentage of fat that I would want to be, etc. So can you go over that again? Because I don't remember a lot of it.
Right. So there's a lot of like different suggestions based on this. There's some suggestions that say, quite low numbers. And then there's, different camps kind of discussing that possibly, the low numbers are adequate for just maintenance, but to really build muscle and do it like well, higher numbers are more, what do you call it? Just more you'll get better results with higher protein consumption.
Right.
So I would say, it's easy to modulate how much protein you're eating. You just have to kind of like get a good sense of, how much things weigh and how much protein you're getting from that. And then you're just kind of like, all right, is this working? No, then I can eat a little bit more. But, on the low end, the suggestions are 1 gram of protein per kilogram of muscle mass.
Okay.
So, but I think that's actually a little bit too low. So often what I do is I actually switch that to, instead of per kilogram, I say per pound.
Right.
So that makes it so that is it okay if we talk about your weight on camera?
Yeah. They don't have a column, so it doesn't.
150 pounds. And we're going for a conservative kind of estimate of looking at 20% body fat. So meaning 80% of that we're going to estimate as, our muscle mass. So 80% of 150 is 120. So if I'm suggesting 1 gram of protein per pound of muscle mass, then I would say you're looking at 100 to 120 grams of protein daily.
Right.
And what I was going to say is, and I mentioned this last time as well, I don't think it hugely matters whether you're doing that spread out throughout the day or in like larger doses at once or at 2 times. And then, so it's not a big thing to worry about. There are much more important things such as like your training and the fact that you actually are getting the protein to worry about than like when you're getting it.
Right. So let's say I have a goal of like 120 grams a day, and like, is it better if I get 100? If I can't get, 120, is it better to be a little bit under, or is it always better to just like shoot over?
I think that
under days, like I guess what I'm saying is like, are under days bad?
I don't want to make you feel like it's like bad in that sense. It's more so just like try to be consistent. If you don't make it one day, it's not a big deal. Tomorrow's another opportunity to make it. Right. But give yourself, that's why I'm saying, like, give yourself a bit of a range. 100 to 120, I think, is a good range. So that if you're not meeting that 120, you're still you have a good buffer there to fall under. I can give you just a couple of quick examples of what like how much protein is in certain foods.
Oh, that'd be great. Like an egg. I really like eggs.
Yeah. So an egg, if you just look up eggs protein content on Google, it'll tell you 13 grams of protein per 100 grams. 100 grams is,
A lot of eggs in a day, John. That's a lot of eggs.
100 grams is like 2 eggs. It's just under 2 eggs, I believe. So if you have, 3 eggs, you're already at 20% of your daily intake.
Right. Or I can just eat 10 eggs a day. We're not worried about cholesterol or anything else, are we?
No, we're not. That's a good question. Let's talk about, do you want to spend, maybe we'll just touch on it real quickly.
Sure. Yeah.
Just generally speaking, I think the amount of cholesterol that you consume through food, I think it's been shown that it has very little effect on the actual amount of cholesterol found in blood when they measure that. So from that sense, I think it's not a big issue. And then also the kind of model of chronic cardiac disease from cholesterol kind of being placed as like at the center of being responsible for that. I think that's a faulty model that's slowly kind of shifting by the wayside. It'll take, I think, a few more years for that to kind of come to the forefront. But I think the food that you're intaking has no big impact on the total amount you have, and it's not a big issue to begin with.
Awesome. So then I'm just going to be Gaston then and just like eat dozens of eggs a day.
Yeah. All right, let's try chicken breast. I'm going to type in chicken breast. So 100 grams of chicken breast has 31 grams of protein.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And
like, is the idea like lean protein is best, or is protein protein?
I would say protein is protein when it comes to from animal source, but from plant sources, it's different because the amount of calories you consume drastically increases for the same amount of protein that you consume from non-animal
concentration
sources.
And then how about, so you did mention before, I don't know if you're done with chatting about protein, because I know you mentioned also perhaps like staying away from dairy is a good idea.
Right. I we were just talking about, like, I think at that point, like, is there anything that you want to cut out of your diet? And I said, if there's anything you're considering, the 2 most common things are gluten and dairy. So if you want to cut out dairy, that's okay. I think, like, personally, like, I did talk about how I don't have a problem with fermented dairy. So if you have, yogurt, kefir, sour cream, all those things, I'm okay with that, as long as they're like, really good sources. But also, like, cutting dairy can be kind of challenging because it cuts down on your sources of protein. So if you're having a hard time kind of meeting your protein target, then I don't want to recommend cutting it out. Have you had like problems with eating dairy previously?
No.
Yeah, I think a large portion of the population has no problems with eating dairy. So if you fit into that, then there's no reason to cut it out, I think.
Honestly, I don't think I eat that much dairy other than cheese anyway. Like, I don't drink milk. I don't eat really cereal. I really don't eat that much yogurt. I might actually try.
Cool. I can teach you how to make your own Greek yogurt.
Cool.
I made a fresh batch this morning.
Did you? I actually have. Do you use rennet? Because I have some rennet downstairs.
I do use rennet. You use that for making cheese.
Yeah. I want to try to make cheese too.
Cool. Let's do it together.
About that later. That's a different conversation, a different video chat.
Yeah. Right. And then let's do one more. Let's do like steak. Steak protein content. Oh, it's actually less, 25 grams, because it's more fatty, right? 25 grams of protein per 100 grams of steak.
So is that why you hear a lot of people talk about, like, well, I only eat really chicken when I'm like working on weight gain and whatever, because I guess it just has a high concentration of protein and low fat, just like a clean meat kind of deal?
Yeah, exactly. So you're maximizing, like they're eating as little as possible while maximizing the protein. That way they don't have.
Can I ask another question? How do you feel about like protein supplements in like smoothies or whatever, like a Vega powder or whatever?
I used to take those quite a lot, and then at some point I just like I don't have like a strong opinion on this. I just have my own experience. At some point I was like, you know what? I think I'm just getting enough protein from the real food that I'm eating, and
Yeah.
I'm just spending all this extra money on this stuff that I don't think it's really helping me all that much. So I've kind of got, yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it because I drink a lot of smoothies at home anyway.
Mhm.
So if it was an easy way for me to just like put a spoon in just to make sure. I don't know.
Yeah, like so I used to do that, and it probably helped me. It's hard to know for sure, but I think it probably helped me. So if you're having a hard time meeting that 100 to 120 gram target, then absolutely go ahead and use some
Do you have a
supplement.
brand that you particularly like, or do you like not really
Uh,
care?
there's one, I think it was like called New Zealand whey protein. It's a bit expensive, but it's like apparently New Zealand um, dairy is like some of the best dairy in the world, and it's like
All
they
right.
regulate, I guess. Don't quote me on any of this because this
Sure.
is all just like hearsay that I've picked up from, people that I've never actually looked up myself. But yeah, they have like really good dairy, just because their cows are really well kept or whatever, or they're, um,
Sure.
I
They
think,
love their cows.
um,
All right.
yeah,
Well, I'll take a look anyway.
yeah, New Zealand whey protein, I think is what it's called. And then regarding nutrition, so there's like, so we have adequate protein, and then kind of and I was saying so you need adequate protein. It's better if you're in calorie surplus. And then there's two other points that I mentioned. One of them was that um, I want you to have more of a micronutrient focus as well. And kind of like the two micronutrients that I specifically, well, not two micronutrients, two sources of food that I specifically mentioned for getting like lots of micronutrients from. Where do you remember what they were?
Nope. I'm glad we're talking about this again.
So we talked about organ meats.
Oh yeah, I remember. I blocked it out for a reason, I guess.
Yeah, organ meats, liver and onions, liver pate. Um, does that jog your memory? Do you remember what the second thing was?
No.
That's okay. It was broth, so bone broth.
Oh yeah, I do remember. I don't know. I can't believe I forgot that. I was like already planning on making it.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome, yeah. And so just briefly, liver is just like high in many minerals, like lots of the like magnesium, zinc. These are ones that people are traditionally low in anyway. So definitely can up that through liver. And then from broth, I'm thinking the main one that we really need is collagen, something that we don't get a lot from muscle meat. And collagen will be important for muscle hypertrophy as well.
Well, so and it's nice going into the fall and winter too. I'm happy to have lots of soups.
Yeah, bone broth pumpkin soup, baby.
Yeah, that sounds. I just got a pumpkin from the pumpkin patch last weekend, so that makes sense. Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, I think I've covered everything I want to cover regarding the diet part. Just anything.
I did ask you another question. I don't know about like what to eat before, what to eat after, and like, is it important to eat protein? I guess specifically at a certain time in my day on the days that I am working out. But from what I remember, you said it doesn't really matter because I'm not like super training for any like specific uh, sport. I'm just doing it for fun, so I don't
Yeah.
take it that seriously.
Yeah, I think that's generally my stance is when it's like very detailed kind of aspect of the whole kind of picture. I think, is that really that important, or are there kind of a few very basic things that we can really focus on that'll have a much greater effect?
Right.
And I
This is
think
always part of conversation, like eat a banana like 30 minutes before your workout and you'll do a better job, or like drink chocolate milk within 30 minutes after your workout for better results and stuff. But you don't necessarily feel like that is important.
I think again that falls under the category of good marketing, and and
The
maybe
chocolate
there
milk people are making a lot of money, is what you're saying.
and maybe there is something to it, but again, it's probably something so small that it might make a big difference on like a scale of like professional athletes, where like every little edge they get on one another is an edge that makes them millions of dollars. That's kind of like where I was taking it. But if it's just you trying to do the best you can for your 12 weeks, yeah, it's probably just a small piece of the puzzle, and you can probably just focus on big, better, more important things.
Well, I also asked you because my husband and I have been brewing beer in our basement. So about like drinking alcohol and whether or not that's an A-okay. And you mentioned something about like I could have like a bottle every now and then, but I can't remember if you said it's not days that I exercise, right? So on a workout day, don't necessarily have it after. More, if I remember correctly, because it would affect my sleep that day. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah,
See, I
yeah,
listened.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, you basically summarized it. So try to do it on days where you're not working out, and then that way you can sleep well, recover well from the workout, and then the next day.
Go
Um,
for your mediocre
yeah,
beer.
and it'll be your rest day, and then maybe it'll help you rest even more, like get into a better, state of relaxation.
So
and and that's an underappreciated aspect to the whole thing as well.
mind-altering substances.
Auto
Underappreciated.
I was going to say auto regulation, just that aspect of being able to feel yourself relax and recover and be ready to take on the next thing the next day.
Right. I mean, that's a challenge for me just in general. So, or any mom,
For everybody, yeah.
or any person, I suppose. I don't have to gatekeep being stressed.
Yeah, I mean, your problems are not problems. Your difficulties and obstacles are challenging, and they're real, and it sucks to have to go through them. But unfortunately, they're not unique to you. Everyone's going
No, no, they're not. I'm not the only one
to.
struggling right now. Wow, wow.
You're not struggling though, but
No,
it
no,
just feels like
not
fine.
really. Sometimes, yeah.
I guess the last thing let's talk about is sleep. This won't take very long. So, I mean, the general advice is that I give is like between 7 and 9 hours. Most people fit in that.
Yeah.
Start at 8, or whatever number you're at. Get close to 7 or 8, 7 to 9.
Yeah, I'm usually between 7.5 to 9, depending on the day. Like maybe weekends I get a little bit less, but generally speaking, and I'm pretty lucky my kid sleeps. So I'm
Yeah,
not usually up at night. So
that's excellent.
yeah, it is excellent. It is excellent. So yeah, I might try to go to bed a little bit earlier while
Hmm.
I'm doing this, just to like help make sure.
That's
But
that's a really good point. So maybe I guess besides the amount of time that you get to sleep, the consistency is also an important factor. Going to bed at the same time every day.
is it?
It's good for setting your circadian rhythm
Okay.
to be as efficient as it can be.
All right.
If your circadian rhythm is as like on point as it can be, I think a safe statement to make is that your muscle hypertrophy is not going to be perturbed.
Right. Got it.
So we're just trying to make sure all the things are taken care of, so that we just have to create the best environment for muscle hypertrophy to happen.
Right. So then, like, if sleep time is important, and like I wake up around the same time anyway, because Theo wakes up, but what about meals? Like, would it be important to try to keep my meals to like the same time every day to keep that rhythm as well? Or do you think that maybe isn't as important?
Really good point. Really good point. Yeah. So definitely meal timing has a huge impact on your circadian rhythm. So if you're going to take the effort to, have an impact on that rhythm through timing your sleep, then I think it's important to time the food a little bit as well. I don't think you have to be super restrictive in terms of like having the food at the exact same time, more so like avoiding eating like a few hours before sleep, right? So like at least 2 to 3 hours before sleep is kind of like you've already started your fast.
Right. I usually just brush my teeth like after dinner, and then you don't want to eat anything because you've brushed your teeth, because then it tastes bad. You don't, and then you have to do it again. So it's my trick.
That's really good advice if other people are also not like gross and just like like whatever, I'll just eat anyway.
That's my husband. He's like, I'll just brush my teeth again. I won't. I hate brushing my teeth. I hate it. Like exercise is something I feel like everybody needs to do. I think it's really important to like move your body and keep yourself going.
Mm-hmm.
If I never had to brush my teeth again, I'd be so happy. I hate it so much.
Yeah, I'm probably on the same boat as you. I kind of like I view it as like this necessary evil, and I'll often think about like what did like prehistoric man do for their oral health, like
not much, and then they got serious issues, and a lot of people died because of gum disease. Like, there's a reason we do it. And my toothbrush is timed, and like the whole time I'm like, I hate it so much.
I thought hunter-gatherers had perfect teeth, though.
Did they? I don't know. Maybe they chewed on bones like dogs. I don't know.
This is only from like videos of archaeologists I've watched. They say like prehistoric man used to have like really good teeth, but again,
maybe they didn't eat a lot of processed sugars.
I think that's a hypothesis, is that agrarian culture resulted in like some malformation of the mouth and teeth from excess carbohydrates. But again, another topic for another conversation. So that's good. I think we covered all three things. Let's just kind of review it real quick one more time. So adequate stimulus. We're doing the waves between volume and intensity.
And maybe I think it's important to know, like, I don't really have a lot of time in my day because I'm taking care of my kids. So these workouts are going to be, I asked you anyway, to try to keep them within like a 30 to 45 minute range, including a warm up and cool down. So I can like fit it in at nap time or.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be like an hour and a half of weight training every day, right?
No, so it can be short, but what I will say is we have to then really pay key attention to what phase we're in. If we're in the volume phase, so you have, let's say 30 minutes, that's totally fine. Take 30 minutes to do your workout. But then in order to get that volume up, you might have to do that same workout 2 or 3 different times throughout the day, wherever you can find that 30 minute chunk to get into.
Right. Or I can fit, like some days I will have more time than others. I just on a general sense, if I'm home all day with Theo by myself, it's hard to.
Yeah. So I think it's like, honestly, like what matters when it comes to training is that you have that weight between 40 to 85% of your 1 rep max, and you're pushing it close to failure. And in honesty, like I find that rest times don't really matter. What matters is you get that volume, you work your muscles close to failure, and you alternate between doing a lot and doing really intense exercises.
Right. Cool.
And then diet, protein-centric approach, thinking about getting 100 to 120 grams of protein daily. having a micronutrient kind of outlook as well, making sure we're getting lots of minerals through some of the foods like and vitamins through liver or bone broth, foods like that.
Mhm.
And then lastly, getting a good amount of sleep and working on that circadian rhythm by getting by going to sleep consistently.
Right. Sounds easy in theory, John.
Yeah. I think that covers everything I want to talk about. Actually, yeah, one last thing. Just want to say, I want to go over this is a post I've had on Instagram, so I'm just going to quote a couple of things I've written down so I just sound clear. But these are the 4 keys to success that I think are really important.
Okay.
And here's what they are. 1, just be consistent. Okay, consistency is king. It doesn't matter if the intensity is not there every day. It's okay. You're just building a habit. Be consistent.
Got it.
Number 2, make sure you get adequate stimulus from your training. Right? So if you need to take it easy that day, that's okay. Take it easy, but still you have to feel what you're doing. You know, you have to get in there and try to go to the max of what that day allows you. Right?
Yeah.
Next, incorporate periodization into your training. We're definitely going to do that, right? We're going to do that. Wave loading, volume intensity.
Yeah.
And then lastly, auto-regulate and take it easy when you don't feel your best. So I already mentioned that, but really think of training as not this linear thing, but it's just it doesn't make sense. It's doing loop-de-loops.
Well, it's the same with weight loss, right? I definitely noticed that I've lost, I guess, 35 pounds now. And it definitely,
Right?
So you can't think of it as just woo. So I'm assuming that, this type of weight gain, I guess, would follow the same general pattern.
Great. That's great. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. I'm glad that you already have that mindset from this.
Well, yeah, because the plateau times are tough. They're you go to bed and you're just it's been 2 weeks. I've worked so hard, nothing's happened, and then 2 weeks later you're oh, all right, never mind. I feel pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of my favorite phrases is to embrace the plateau. It's this opportunity to just really learn something much deeper than what you've already been doing, because there's a reason why a plateau is happening.
Right.
It's either maybe you just need a little bit more time, or you've now reached a new level where same things aren't going to work anymore, and you need to try something different. So it's just this opportunity to dive deep and find out what that key thing is, and then unlock it.
You have to just respect the journey and respect the process, and know that it is a process. It's not a snap your fingers and it's done kind of deal.
Yeah, it's very cliche, sounds cheesy, but yeah, there's no shortcuts, unfortunately.
No, I get that a lot as a Pilates instructor too. People come to me for pain management, and they think, oh, I've done 5 sessions now and I still have pain. Why am I not feeling better, right? And it's that idea of it's not a quick fix, but the ones that aren't quick fixes are the best fixes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good.
You take it one day at a time, right?
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. The things that aren't quick fixes are the best fixes. I think that's a beautiful way to end.
You can quote it. You can add it on your Instagram quotes if you want.
I think I will do that.
You don't even have to say it was me.
Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me. And
well, thank you. You're the one who's helping me on my journey. It's the least I can do, right?
I'm super happy to help.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the end of the inaugural episode of J-Mart's State of Health podcast. I hope you have some new action items on your to-do list for gaining muscle mass. Possibly you need to change up your training block, or increase protein intake in your diet, or improve sleeping habits. Whatever it may be, I hope this episode serves to be the first step in you taking action towards that behavioral change. If you found value in this episode, please hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. You can also connect with me through my free bodyweight training program, Body Basics, at subscribepage.com/bodybasics.